Hey, what's up, everybody? Today it's Monday, the beginning of the week, and we're starting off pretty decent here. We got some green over here. Look at that. We got some green. Theta up 6%. SHIB up 4% near. XRP got up to 240, up to 250. Let's take a look here. So today's what's today? Well, for me, it's the 24th, but so it's the 24th. And back over here, we were sort of creating this little kind of like an inverse head and shoulders, if you will. You kind of have a little shoulder, a head, and a shoulder here, right? We broke above the neckline, we back tested it, and then we came up to meet the measured move. All right, so this is the retrace, right? Remember we were talking about that? We came down and then we started leveling off. And then as we level off, we saw evidence of that. And then now comes the retrace. So now we're sort of halfway in the retrace. So this is going to be a very interesting situation. How does the price fare through the retrace, right? Do we have to have a retrace and then we come back down into reaccumulation and then go sideways and then break out? Do we have an A, right? And then we go up for a B, and then we have to come all the way down for a C and then break out? Or do we just keep grinding our way up, flag out, maybe come down a little bit, back test down in here a little bit more, come back up, work your way out, then, just basically grinding our way out of there? So those are the options. I don't know exactly. That's the short time frame. But what I do know is that eventually we will break out. And my assumption is we break to the upside. The reason why I think we're breaking to the upside is because we're flagging to the downside. We're correcting to the downside, right? So the overall trend is up, right? So we have this beautiful base. Look at this base. I mean, it goes back for a long time. I mean, look how massive this is. This is why this was. If you spent all of your time buying XRP, like imagine XRP. The year is 2022, the summer of 2022. We're right in here. You're buying, paycheck after paycheck after paycheck. Most people get a paycheck every 2 weeks. Maybe you put 5%, 5%, 5%, 5%, 5%, year after year after year after year. Oh my God, this would be a paradise, right? And then you get this explosive move. I mean, come on, that would be life changing, honestly, right? So it just goes to show that that's when you accumulate, is not when you're necessarily crashing. Buying the dip is different in an uptrend, but accumulating in accumulation areas, right? And how do we know this is an accumulation area? Is because you can see we are in an accumulation. This was an accumulation area, right? So now we know, right? Now we know. So if XYZ coin, whatever coin, doesn't matter what coin, but if that coin had a rise and a crash and then a retrace and then it came down into reaccumulation and then it went sideways and it was a good asset, and if it goes sideways for a year, that would be a really good spot. This is the dollar cost average paradise right here, because ultimately you break out, right? And that's what we have here. Not only that, but that's also what we had over here, right? Look at, man, what I would do to go back in time and accumulate XRP down here. Oh my God, that would be just kudos to whoever has done that. I got into crypto the summer of 2017, so probably up here. Yeah, was that the summer of 2017? Let's see. Yeah, okay, so there's June or May of 2017, all of that till, yeah, definitely up here. But I did not buy XRP. I was buying Bitcoin at the time because Coinbase didn't list XRP. Go figure. It didn't come out till much later, right? So interestingly, and then Coinbase does not really like XRP. They were the first ones to delist XRP, and they were the last ones to list XRP back in the day, right? I mean, they didn't want to, right? And then when we won the lawsuit, once it was finally over, Brian Armstrong goes, "Okay, congrats." What do you mean, congrats? Where the hell were you the whole time? You didn't believe in XRP, not even close. You know, Brian Armstrong, he's a Bitcoin maxi at the end of the day, but he's a businessman, right? He's got to make money for his company. So I don't think that guy has XRP's best interest in mind, even though Ripple and the XRP community had Coinbase's best interest in mind, when in fact, you know, when Coinbase got sued, we actually stood up and said that's not right, right? Because the SEC was going on an onslaught against everybody, and then that's why we needed Trump to win, and now that's all over with. So here we are today, and we're at the verge of a potential major breakout here with XRP. So anyways, but I'm just saying, like, if you had all that time to accumulate, I mean, think about that week. Most people get a paycheck every 2 weeks. If you take 2% of that paycheck, or 5%, or 10%, or whatever you can afford, probably not as much as now as you used to, because of the fact that we have more inflation, so you're spending more money, so you have less money at the end of the month. But if you spent, you know, every 2 weeks here, I mean, that's a lot of paychecks, right? So that's a lot of money in XRP. Cheap XRP, 40, 50, 60 cent XRP, right? So that's why it pays, and that's what I did. Luckily, that's what I was doing over here. I didn't get as much as I wanted, but I also got more than I ever thought I would, if that's a weird way to think about it. I even sold, I said this before, but I even sold my house back in here. Not to buy XRP, but because of different reasons. Remember, the interest rates were skyrocketing back over here. They were going up dramatically. And my house was already valued, because I bought the house in 2015, and I bought it for $200,000. And 7 years later, it doubled in price. It went up to $420,000, right? So in 7 years, I doubled the house's value. So to me, as a trader, I took the profit. I said, okay, that's it. I'm selling the house. Interest rates are going up, which is probably might put a little bit of pressure on my house. And if it doesn't, then the house is going to sit on the lot for a while, because a lot of houses are for sale, but they're not selling, right? So I decided I got to sell it quickly. I got to get out. So because if the interest rates were to go even further, and I didn't know what was going to happen. Obviously, we had Joe Biden as president, and who knows what kind of stuff that they would try. Luckily, it didn't go as planned for them. So they didn't get to do their great reset. They didn't usher us into a CBDC system. They didn't crush the global economy. They kind of just skated by until the next election, I think because Trump was a thorn that they needed to get rid of, and they couldn't take any risk because Trump was there, right? So they had to play it kind of cool, right? So I didn't take the chance. I said, you know what, I'm out of here. So I took the profit, and now I was sitting on the cash, right? Sitting on the cash. It just so happened to be that this area was the reaccumulation spot. So what did I do? I used some of the cash from the house to buy XRP. And it actually worked out very nicely. So if I wouldn't have done that, and I would have stayed in my house, I would have had less XRP, right? So basically, I made the right call, pretty much, to put it like that. So, but what I'm saying here is, in the future, right, when we go into reaccumulation, and stuff is still in not even talking like theta, for example. So if we look at theta here, this is going to be, if like we were talking about yesterday, right? If this is 3 waves up and this is 3 waves down, and I'm expecting another wave for XRP. So here's XRP right here. It's right there. You got 1, 2, 3, right? So if we're expecting another wave up in XRP, then we should get a wave up for theta. And that makes sense because there's confluence in that, because you have 3 waves up, 3 waves down, and then you might get 5 waves up or 3 waves up. But basically what you would get is a 1, 2, 3 wave move, right? So if this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that would be an A. You come up, that would be a B. And then after that, you would either get a C, which I don't think because you'd be too high. I think more than likely you'd probably get some type of reaccumulation and then a blast off. So what I'm saying here is, if we get this, that would be the time to load up, like just buy, because people don't like buying when it goes sideways. People buy when things break out, or when if you have a big dump, right? That's when people buy. But when volatility slows down and you're just chilling and chilling and chilling, people aren't interested because there's no excitement to get them to buy, right? But those are the masses, but we're not the masses. We're still part of retail, but we're sort of above retail in the fact that we know sideways is good. We know sideways, and it really depends where it's going sideways. Like if it's going sideways at the top of a wave, obviously that's not good. So you want the price to have already gone into a retrace, because what that does is, so you have your big pump, right? And then your crash, people taking profits, then people taking advantage of the dip, and then it cuts and cuts and cuts and cuts through the retrace levels. You have all these retracement levels, right? And then once you cut through those, you loosened them up a little bit. So then the price has lost its momentum because it started from down here. It's going up, 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 up. It lost its momentum in the retrace. So now it's tired. So it has to come back down, and then it kind of but as it comes down, you built support down here. So now it's holding and holding and holding, right? But at the same time, it's going sideways. That's the time to accumulate, right? Not financial advice. That's not advice. That's just general terms that I'm speaking. So after it's done reaccumulating, it's going to start going, hopefully, usually, back to the upside. But this time, it doesn't have to slice through all the retracement levels because it already did that. It already cut the door open halfway. So now all it's got to do is push through. But why didn't it push through here? How come it pushed through here? Because you reset the momentum, you reset the oscillators, you reset the sentiment, the price, you reset the market, and it really is, it resets the momentum so that when price starts going back up, it has a lot of strength behind it, leading to a big breakout, right? That's usually how things go. So knowing this information, it might take 5 years, it might take 10 years, it might take 20 years. It might take 20 years worth of crypto cycles, but eventually you will be a millionaire. I trust me on that. That's the goal. That's why everybody's here, because they all want to be richer than they are, right? That's the real reason people care, right? That's the only thing people care about is the money, right? And that's why I don't like politics, because it's all bullcrap. It's not about politics, it's about money. Like, for example, I like Trump, and then you have guys who like Trump who like Hannity. You know Hannity, or Tucker Carlson, right? Or some of those guys. The problem with those guys are they have the privilege to ask Trump they get to interview Trump, right, for questions. The problem, though, is they don't ask real questions. They ask questions people don't really care about, honestly, right? And, you can say, oh, yeah, they do. They ask questions we care about. And, yeah, to some extent. The only reason we care about them is because because that's what everybody's talking about on the mainstream fake news, right? But what the fake news will not ever dare ask Trump or talk about, how dare you talk about that? You will never talk about that. And it's like, well, what? What are you talking about? Money. You cannot talk about, you could say, Mr. President, you can ask him about the economy, right? You can ask him about inflation. That's we've heard that many, many times. Fine. But they will not ask specifically about money itself, right? Because what is the number one problem in the United States that people have around the world? Money, right? And it's not like they don't get money. Maybe they have a job. They get money. But the problem is our money system is broken. Hannity will never, ever tell Trump that or ask Trump that or even say that because he's part of the problem in a weird way. I love Hannity. I think he's great. I think he's a patriot, but I think there's some things that are above his pay grade that you're not allowed to talk about. And that's what makes me upset. And I figured, Tucker left Fox. You would think Tucker would ask these types of questions. I mean, he's getting a little bit better as far as pushing the envelope as to what needs to be discussed in terms of how do we get our country back. And there's only one answer to that. That is you change, you completely transform the money system, because that's what the problem is. You have a $20 bill in your wallet. You take it out and you can buy 20 things worth $1, right? Now, that was years ago. Now you take a $20 bill out. Now you can only buy 10 things, right? Worth $2. $2 each. So that's the problem, right? That's the problem in a nutshell. The money is weaker. The money isn't worth anything, right? A $20 bill isn't worth what it used to be. So if you're a news anchor like Peter Doocy or whoever's in the White House correspondence, all those fake people in that room that ask Trump questions, it's like, dude, why are you letting these imbeciles ask you questions? Why can't you let real patriots, like, why not invite? Okay, so every day Trump's in the Oval Office, right? He's signing executive orders, blah, blah, blah. And then after that, they ask him questions. The media. Why does the media get to ask questions? Why? Well, what I would do if I was president, I would let the farmers in. I would call and get farmers on a plane to DC. I would get truck drivers. I would get grocery store workers. I would get, I don't know, a landscaper, a construction worker. I would put them in the room. The blue collar, the workers, right? People who work in the steel mill, people who work in manufacturing. I would bring those people. Forget the fake news. Why did they get to ask the questions? They ask the same stupid fake news questions over and over and over, but they're not even what we care about. They're so out of touch, right? Hannity is a multi-millionaire. Do you think he has the same problems you and I have? Hell no. He doesn't understand what it's like to be broke, to be poor, to have your dollar be stretched so far where it's not even feasible anymore because he's loaded, right? So he doesn't ask from that perspective. Like, for example, a truck driver who used to be making a lot more, right? He's making more dollars, but those dollars are a lot weaker than they used to be. So in reality, he's making less than he used to be. So he notices that. But somebody like Tucker or Hannity or some of those fake news guys, they don't notice that. And even if they do notice, they would never ask, because you start going down a rabbit hole. You start going through a subject matter that you will get fired. You will get fired, right? And that is what? The money system, right? They're allowed to talk about the economy. They're allowed to talk about inflation. But as soon as you start talking about the money system, the system in which creates the money, right? The Federal Reserve, the central banking system, the fiat paper currency system, the unbacked fiat currency system. They print money out of thin air. They loan it to the government with interest attached. Then we, the taxpayer, have to pay it back plus interest. Well, Trump, what sort of rigged deal is that? To me, that's a scam right there. Right? So why wouldn't nobody ask him about that? Like, why wouldn't nobody ask Trump, hey, Trump, the number one problem we have is our money. It doesn't work. A $20 bill is weak. We have a lot of, because that $20 bill is heavily inflated. How do we fix that problem? Oh, we're going to drill, baby. No. I don't want to hear that. We're going to drill, baby, drill. No, that's not going to fix the problem. That will help the problem by alleviating some of the stress, but that doesn't fix the problem, right? If I have, COVID, and I go to the doctor, and the doctor says, oh, you have a cough. It's like, yeah, but what's causing my cough? Oh, you have COVID. Yeah, that's right. Well, that's what's causing the cough, right? The virus is causing the cough. Just like the virus isn't causing the inflation. Everybody wants to talk about the cough, but nobody wants to talk about what's causing the cough, which is the COVID, which is the virus, right? And translation to that, nobody wants to talk about, the Federal Reserve and the money system, right? They would rather talk about the inflation, the symptom, right? Inflation is a symptom of a dying system. And what is causing the symptom is, again, our money system, right? We all the banks around the world, right? They're all part of the fiat currency system. And that's the debt-based system, right? And that's how the government, the military, right? That's how we've been able to conquer, is really using the mighty force of the dollar backed by the United States military, right? But who's in control of the military now? All right. So at the end of the day, do you destroy the dollar and put at risk your country, right? Because right now the dollar is still the world reserve currency. It's the strongest currency in the world compared to other fiat currencies, right? And when I mean stronger, I mean as a whole, not necessarily dollar per dollar, but as a whole, it is more widely used, more available. So but that system is cancer to everyday Americans. But you see, nobody will ask or tell Trump about that or ask him about that because you're not allowed to, right? Because then you're starting to talk about the real problems at hand, and we can't have that, right? So that's kind of I don't know. We're talking about crypto, and I don't know how I get on this subject, but it really bothers me that they ask them the stupidest questions. Like, I get their questions people want to know, but if I had the pleasure, if I had the opportunity to ask President Trump a question, I would ask him about, how do we fix our money? Your slogan, Mr. President, is "Make America Great Again." Why? Why is it not "Make Money Great Again"? Right? Make money great again. Right? And then you can use the gold, the Bitcoin, the crypto aspect to it as well. And say, Trump, why do we need the Federal Reserve? Why are we allowing a Federal Reserve, a private central bank, to print all of our money and to basically control our multi-hundred trillion dollar monetary system? How come we allow the Federal Reserve to do that? Look what they've done to our our country, our economy. Look at 2008. Look at the Great Depression. Look at everything else. Look at the gold standard. We went off the gold standard. Look at the fractional reserve system. It's a scam, right? So why do we allow the banks? Joe Biden is not the problem, all right? Anybody who talks about Joe Biden is part of the mainstream narrative. It means nothing. He is nothing. He is a ghost. He is a puppet. He is nothing. All right. What really matters is who controls Joe Biden and who controls that person and who controls that person. Who's all the way up the ladder, right? These are people you don't even know who they exist. They don't have faces, right? We don't know who they are. These are people who own parts, shareholders of very wealthy institutions like the Fed and stuff like that. So, and then you have the IMF, which is another big scam. You have the ECB, right? Or the BIS, right? So, I mean, all these things are part of the establishment, and they are designed to weaken the United States, right? And that's another thing too, like the tariffs and the trade wars and stuff. Trump says, okay, yeah, we got to fix it because they're ripping us off. Well, but nobody would ever bother to ask Trump, well, what allowed the system for ourselves to be ripped off? And he can say, well, it's our stupid politicians that didn't know any better. Okay, well, what are some of the things they could have done, right? Obviously, you want to level the playing field, and you want to, have things fair and balanced. But at the end of the day, it's not fair and balanced because the system was designed to not make it so. The reason why is because it's a big heist, right? That's the number one. It's not the border. It's not Russia and Ukraine. It's the heist that's going on as we speak, right? They're stealing our purchasing power away. They're stealing our wealth away, right? And that's how they do it. That's how they do it. They do it through the business cycle, through boom and bust cycles. That's how the banks, the hedge funds, the traders, the market manipulators, the market makers, these guys that are at the very, very, very top, the trading desk at JP Morgan, these guys are savages, right? And that's how they do it. And they're basically leveraging mom and dad's 401k to maximize their profits. And then at the end of it, dad might get, $400,000 retirement, something bull crap, peanuts compared to what they got, right? And how much money did they make off his 400,000, just using that as an example, right? And then how far will that $500,000 go in today's economy? It's not going to go anywhere. You know why? Because our money system is broken. And that is the number one. That is why we talk about crypto. That is why we are here, right? Crypto is the number one solution to the number one problem. Okay? And most people don't even realize that. They can't even comprehend what crypto really is and how it is not just a tool. It is not just an instrument. It is a weapon. Okay? It is a weapon. It is a weapon designed to decentralize the world, right? Because why would I have a bank take my money, loan it out without my consent, make money off of it, and then have the audacity to charge me to keep it there? And then on top of that, they steal my purchasing power by printing more money anyways. It's a triple rigged deal. And most people have no clue that it's happening. That's why you need to watch right now The Money Masters. You're on YouTube right now. Type in The Money Masters and watch it. and you're going to be blown. This goes back through the history of the banking system. This is the number one documentary you'll ever watch. And you know what? If I can have Trump's Twitter account for one day, I would retweet that documentary. Why wouldn't Elon Musk retweet that document? Because I think Elon Musk is more Trump than Trump is Trump. He's a little bit more of he pushes the envelope a little bit more than actually Trump does. I mean, Trump used to back in the day, but his advisors say, oh, don't do that. You got to be politically correct. You can't be saying stuff like that. Follow the plan. Don't mess up the plan, right? Because there's a plan that we don't know about. And that plan is in reference to changing the economy, because Trump can drill for oil and bring the cost of energy down. But what about everything else? Well, everything else revolves around energy, right? So producing more energy, yes, it's going to help a little bit, but it's not going to solve the absolute problem, right? So if I'm eating spicy chicken wings, what's going to be the solution, right? Is it Pepto-Bismol? Or is it don't eat the chicken wings anymore? Stop eating them, right? It's like, people would rather drink the Pepto and eat more wings than just stop eating the wings that's destroying your stomach or whatever. And that's just like where we are today. The Federal Reserve, the central banking system, at the end of the day, crypto, right, is that solution. So I wish that I can see an interview like this between Trump and somebody else interviewing Trump about what we're talking about how do we, Mr. President, how do we fix inflation? Oh, we're going to drill, baby, drill. No. That's a Band-Aid. But how do we fix the system? No. You can't fix the system. The system is broken. Let's say I would ask Trump, and remember, he's got to be very careful what he says. So that's why the interviewer, because you have to take in optics, for example. Optics are very important. And Trump, if you can ask Trump anything you want, but he's not going to give you the answer you want because of optics, right? If there's a plan in place to change the financial system, and if he says the wrong thing, the banks are listening, they're not going to know, right? That's why Gregory Mannarino, sometimes he doesn't understand Trump. He thinks that Trump sometimes is a bad guy, and he's working with the Fed, trying to lower rates, but he doesn't know that's part of the plan to expose them. But that's another topic for another day. But I wish somebody could interview Trump and ask him about these questions and ask him about, hey, instead of, imagine, Mr. President, there's no Federal Reserve, there's no Treasury, and there's no financial system, right? Let's say we had no financial system at all. We had no monetary system. Mr. President, if we had nothing, how would you build the new financial system if we had no financial system? Because if you ask Trump, hey, this financial system sucks, can you make a new one? He's going to go, oh, well, slow your roll. He's not going to really say it. But if you kind of word it in a way where it's like a hypothetical more than a direct question, maybe he can kind of give you a little bit of insights on how he would build it, right? Because Trump's a builder. I would say, Trump, you're a builder, right? Oh, yes, I'm a builder. Yeah, I'm a builder. Okay, so if we had no financial system whatsoever, we had no monetary system at all, we didn't have the Fed, we didn't have anything, how would you build the financial system, the new financial system? How would you build it? Would you use gold? Would you use the Treasury? Would you use crypto? Would you use, blockchain? Would you use the Fed? Would you use the private bankers? Would you use some old guy with a big beard controlling all of the stuff behind the scene? Remember Wizard of Oz? That's what it's all about. That's the number one problem right there, is the Wizard of Oz, right? Who's the Wizard of Oz? The guy behind the curtain pulling all the strings. And who's that? the banking system, the financial system. And guess what? Nobody wants to change it. Why? Because it has allowed these hedge funds and these corporations, mainly the corporations, it's allowed all of these multi-billion-dollar corporations a huge advantage, right? Because if I'm a big corporation like Walmart or whoever, I could put all of my assets on credit, right? And then instead of, they do weird things. Like someone asks, well, what are you going to do with your XRP as you want to cash out? Some people say, oh, I'm going to sell it. Some people say, oh, I'm going to do this or I'm going to use it. But guess what the smart people say? Or I should say the savages. They say, I'm going to borrow against it. Right? That's what they're going to do. They're going to borrow against it. That way they never go to zero. They're always borrowing against it, right? So that's a tactic people use. All right. So if that's a tactic, then you got to imagine the big guys at the top of the ladder, they're also using those tactics, right? For their assets. All right. And sometimes it can be fair, sometimes it's not so fair. But what has allowed the wild west of our financial system, that's why we have regulations, so things can be regulated, so things can be fair and balanced. You know what I mean? So let's take a look at XRP here. It's up at 246. So anyways, the only reason I talk about this stuff is because this is what drives me, right? This is why I got interested in technical analysis. This is why I love crypto, because these are the solutions to the problem that nobody talks about. Unfortunately, nobody will even dare talk about it, especially with Trump in front of the cameras. Like, man, I would give a lot to see a reporter in the Oval Office ask Trump what I'm talking about. Like, hey, how can we get rid of the Fed? Like, Mr. President, if it were up to you, would you get rid of the Federal Reserve System and replace it with a new patriot-loving system, a system that's decentralized, a system that doesn't have an authoritarian control over our entire monetary system, a system that is not private, right? Why are we allowing a private system? It should be a public system, not a private system, right? So what the hell? Can we change it? You know what I mean? And as far as the gold in Fort Knox, that's a big deal, right? That's why the hairs on my neck were standing up, and I don't even have any. Maybe on my arms, they were standing up when I heard for the first time that somebody asked, or that he said to audit the gold in Fort Knox. That was like a whoa moment. Now we're talking about the juicy stuff. Now we're talking about the good stuff. That's what people care about, right? So yeah, I would love for Trump to paint a picture of how he envisions our new financial system, because everybody's speculating what it's going to be. But Lynette Zhang, and I think this is what started it. I was listening to Lynette Zhang, and she said when they reset. I'm gonna actually play it. Listen to this, and then we'll get to the TA. I'm gonna watch this. So this was from DAI. Shout out to Digital Asset Investor. Go subscribe to him. But this is a little clip from his video. Listen to this.
Remember this video I put out in 2021, folks, because Bitcoin's the distraction. This new financial system was always going to be having some type of gold backing, and they're going to use digital assets to do it, and they're not going to use Bitcoin to tokenize this stuff.
Yeah, and that's another thing. It's all about tokenization, right? So why wouldn't Hannity ask Trump about tokenization? I think that is way bigger than some random story that he's talking about. You know why he doesn't say it? Because nobody even understands that that's a problem. And that's the sad part about our world, is that the biggest problems we have people don't even acknowledge that they're problems because they're not even aware that there is a problem. And that's pretty sad. But when they go to the grocery store and they pay their rent, they realize, oh man, this sucks. I don't have, like my grocery cart's only 25% filled and it's costing me as much as a filled cart, right? That sucks. But they don't bother to go one step further and say, well, why does it suck? Because my money sucks. Well, why does the money suck? Because, ask the questions. See, children today are not taught to ask questions. You got to ask 1,000,001 questions all the time about everything. Question everything, right? If two missionaries knocked on your door and they are talking to you about their religion, all with respect to them and their beliefs, everybody has a right to believe whatever they want. It's important that you ask questions about it, right? And sometimes it doesn't make sense. If you're buying a house and you're financing it, you better damn well ask questions, or you're going to be finding yourself in a situation. Listen to her.
Sort of tracking on the blockchain.
It does look like Bitcoin is going to survive this. But at the end of the day, when we get that inflation and they reset the current currency into the new currency, do you think they're going to reset it against Bitcoin or Tesla stock or even real estate? No. They reset it against gold money because it has the greatest functionality of any.
Wow. Listen to that. Has the greatest functionality of any asset. Okay. So she just said, did you just hear what she said? She said, when we have a currency reset, do you think they're going to reset it against Bitcoin? Do you think they're going to reset it against Tesla stock? Hell no. Do you think they're going to reset it against real estate? No, they're going to reset it against gold. So, okay, that is a beautiful statement. Why hasn't one fake news reporter, how come Hannity hasn't asked that question to Trump? How come Tucker hasn't asked that question to Trump? How come nobody in that Oval Office, all those reporters, they're all a bunch of freaking imbeciles, clowns, right? The media is nothing but clowns. How come none of them ask about that? I mean, I think that would be a massive statement, right? Because they are afraid to be ridiculed. Because CNN would fire you so fast, right? If I'm a news reporter and I just got a job at Fox or MSNBC or some of those fake news, and I asked Trump about that, they would fire me so fast, right? And I'm not blaming the reporters. Sometimes they are. But a lot of it is because they are controlled by management on what to say and what to ask, right? They text them questions and they ask them questions based off whoever's asking them in the office, not necessarily the reporter themselves, right? That's the same problem with the teachers. The teachers teach the kids not how they want to be taught or how the teachers want to teach it, but how the school district and the school union and the state and really the Department of Education, that's why we got rid of it, right? How to teach. And it doesn't work that way. That's like, what job do you guys do? Let's say you are let's say you are a welder. And imagine me coming up to you and saying, hey, you're doing it wrong. You're not supposed to weld like this. You're supposed to weld like that. Well, do you want to do it for me? That's like what's going on with the media, right? So anyways, but she basically just stated, and we will have a reset. So are we going to so what are we going to reset it to? What is the new currency going to be, right? Because again, you look at China, Russia, they're buying record amounts of gold. They're dumping U.S. treasuries, right? And they're buying a lot of gold. And then you look at the BRICS nations. Basically, if you look at the chessboard, all the chess pieces are moving in position against the dollar. And Trump knows that. And I believe he wants that. Because in order to change the system, You have to destroy the system. You have to expose the system. Because why would anybody want a new system when there's nothing wrong with it? Well, of course, everything's wrong with it, but people don't realize that, right? Well, unless you go to the gas station and spend a lot on gas or groceries and things like that, then you understand, hey, there's inflation, but you don't associate that with the system. You associate that with the Democrats or the Republicans or the government or Congress. Congress, they spent too much money. No. But they're only spending money. They're only moving within the system that allows them to move whatever way they want, right? So if the system allows them to spend all this money, then they're going to do it. That's why this system is rigged and corrupt, right? Because it's all about kickbacks. Like, look what Doge is doing. Doge is looking at all of the waste, fraud, and abuse. Why is there waste, fraud, and abuse? Because that money goes to another country for a program that makes no sense, that eventually gets kicked back to them, right? And that's the whole thing. And that's how everything is glued together in a sense, right? They're not doing it for the American people. They're doing it for their own treason. So my final thoughts here are, we will have a financial reset, a global transition, and I think the United States has to lead the way. So we're going to transition from a paper fiat currency system that has so much fraud and abuse and corruption through the Federal Reserve, and we're going to transition away from that to a new decentralized system, maybe through the Treasury, right? Maybe put it all on the blockchain. Maybe put voting on the blockchain. Remember the votes, right? We still have the election fraud that still has to be dealt with. So putting it all on the blockchain, backing it by gold, and eliminating the middleman, because that's what it's about. Who's the middleman? The Federal Reserve. They're the head of the snake, right? So if you eliminate that and you take the power away from the Fed, because first of all, the Fed shouldn't have any power. It's totally unconstitutional. Our founding fathers talked about this. You know, here's one here. And the financial system has been turned over to the Federal Reserve Board. The board administrates the finance system by authority of a purely profiteering group. That's okay. There it is, right there. Boom. That's the number one question right there. Mr. President Trump, why do we allow a Federal Reserve to profit off the backs of American workers? Shouldn't American workers keep all their money? Yes. Okay, so why is the Fed stealing it? Right? Why are we allowing this? Because that's the way it's been. This system's been in place for over 100 years. So nobody knows any other system. Everybody alive today has been born in this system. So nobody knows what it feels like to be opted out of this system completely. Right? So that's why we have the solution. And that's why I'm so bullish on XRP, because XRP could be a part. I'm not saying it's going to be the main solution or even a big part of the solution. I'm just saying XRP could be used as an instrument to be part of the solution, not the problem, in regards to tokenization, right? Because there's a lot of stuff out there. There's trillions and trillions of dollars in assets out there. And a lot of it needs to be tokenized so that it can be easily traded amongst people, right? If I have 10,000 pounds of whatever, and I have to load it in the truck, and I have to ship it all the way to Canada so that the buyer can get it. I mean, instead of that, you tokenize it, right? Whatever it is, and you can trade it that way. I mean, that's just one example, but this is, again, a profiteering group, right? The system is private, conducted for the sole purpose of obtaining the greatest possible profits from other people's money, right? So you work hard, and you can say, well, nobody's stealing my money. I have $5,000 in my checking account or my bank account, and it's still there. So who's stealing my money? Nobody's stealing my money, right? But you got to understand, they're not stealing it directly. They're stealing it through taxes. They're stealing it through inflation. They're stealing it through the price of everything is going up. That's how they're stealing it from you, right? So the reason why it's going up is because all of the fraud that they've done, right? So my thought is we don't have to pay back the debt. Trump says, "Oh, we got to balance the budget. We got to balance the why?" That's another question I would ask Trump. How come nobody's asking him these questions? These are the most important questions of mankind's history, right? I mean, seriously, there's no other important subject. The number one thing people care about is their livelihood, their money, their freedom, their liberty, right? Their family. You cannot have people need to be, well off. They need to feel financially secure, right? They don't want to worry about, well, where's the next paycheck gonna come? How much do I owe this time? People are sick and tired of that, right? So again, why do we use the Federal Reserve System when all they do is rip us off, and they essentially take advantage of it, right? So you can see right here that the inability of the colonists to get power to issue their own money permanently out of the hands of King George III and the international bankers was the prime reason for the Revolutionary War. That was the main reason for the Revolutionary War, right? People think, oh, it's because Britain wanted to take control. No, it was because of the money. It was because Britain wanted the Americans to use Britain's money so that it circulates through their banking system, so that it profits. So basically, it gives the bankers profits, right? So the Bank of England, aka the Rothschilds, who were we fighting against in the Revolutionary War? Was it Britain? It wasn't. It was actually the Rothschilds. The Rothschild central bankers who were in England, right? They have a business, right? Because at the end of the day, the only reason a banker is a banker is so that he can make money. But whose money is he making it from? Our money, right? So, and I'm not talking a little bit, I'm talking trillions of dollars. I'm talking people, oh, Elon Musk, he's the richest man on earth. No, he's not. He's not even near the richest person on earth. The richest family, right? First of all, it's not one. Obviously, he could be the richest one man, but in terms of family wealth, no. I would think the Rothschilds are probably one of the most richest groups. Maybe not so much today as they were back then, but they're still very, very, very powerful, right? And they basically do it through other people's money. So anyways, it's crazy to think that the main reason for the Revolutionary War was to defeat the Rothschild banking system that was in Britain at the time, to because they wanted us to use their money, right? All the colonies, they had the 13 colonies in the United States prior to the Revolutionary War, right? Before this country became an actual nation, they were using King George, the Britain's money system, right? Or England, or the Great Britain's money system, right? So, and the reason why they wanted us to use that money was so that they can get the tax, right? Because that's what it really is. It's all about interest rates and taxes when it comes to the banks. That's how they make their money. And that's why it's a scam, right? It's a scam because the interest in which we owe the banks doesn't exist, because who created it? They created it, right? It's a debt note. It's not real money. It's fake money. And that's why we became our own nation, because we needed our own bank, right? And they don't teach you this in school. They just tell you, oh, well, we wanted to claim our independence from Britain. We didn't want to be under King George III's rule. No, 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 no. It had nothing to do with that. I mean, obviously, yes, we wanted independence. We didn't want anything to do with Britain. Obviously, yeah. But the big reason was about money. It was about basically becoming independent from the banking system, right? Not necessarily Britain itself, but from Britain's banking system. But they don't really tell you about that part, do they? Yeah, because they don't want you putting two to two together, right? So, and here we go. Thomas Jefferson. This is pretty sad. If American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and the corporations which grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. Oh, man, that hit me hard. That hit me hard right there. That was my ancestors came. Some of my family's history was in the Revolutionary War. So, not that I had anything to do with it, but it's and even in the Civil War too. But man, this and here we go. This is the number one problem right here, right? So why doesn't the press corps in the fake news ask Trump, right? Trump basically talks to the media every day, sometimes 2 to 3 times a day. Something is always going on with Trump. I don't know if if he's doing something, or he's giving a speech, or he's signing executive orders, or he's opening up something, or he's doing something, or he just talked about the new F-47, the fighter plane, right? I mean, every day there's something new going on. So the fake news will ask him questions. Why wouldn't they ask about this? This is probably the most sickest thing we can deal with. I would say, Mr. President. Yes. Who are you with? Who are you with? Oh, me, Mr. I'm not with anybody. I'm with the patriots of this country. I'm not with the fake news. So I'm going to ask you a legit, real question, not what these idiots ask you all the time, every day. Same questions, retarded, stupid, right? So, anyways, my question here is that, you know Thomas Jefferson, right? Oh yeah, the great Thomas Jefferson, yeah. Okay, did you know, Mr. President, that Thomas Jefferson, did you know that he said that if the American people ever allow the private banks, which is the Federal Reserve, to control the issue of their currency, right? Notice they say their currency, right? Their currency. It's not our currency, it's their currency. Right? The Federal Reserve debt note, it's their instrument, right? The Federal Reserve is creating trumpets, clarinets, and flutes, and we're playing it, thinking it's our flute, our clarinet. It's not. It's theirs. We're just renting it, right? So, anyways, Mr. President, Thomas Jefferson basically said, if we allow the banks to control our currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and the corporations, then that's another thing. That's why this system has gone on so long, is because the corporations are with the banks and the banks are with the corporations. That's what allows this marriage. And that's kind of why Bernie Sanders actually did pretty well, right? Because Bernie Sanders led a grassroots movement, because Bernie Sanders talked about what? Wall Street, the banks, Wall Street banks and the corporation and the greedy profits. He's got the right idea, and I like that about Bernie. That's the only thing I like, right? That's the only thing Bernie had going for that, right? But anyways, I digress. Yeah, I would definitely be wanting to ask about this, because at the end of the day, you know, Look at this. The rich will strive to establish their dominion and enslave the rest. They always did, they always will. They will have the same effect here as elsewhere. If we do not buy the power of government, keep them in their proper spheres, right? The banks. So, anyways, I spoke a whole hour on this stuff, and I think it's the reason from time to time, this is what I talk about. The reason why I talk about this is because, for one thing, it's my channel. I could talk about what I want, but the main reason is because we have to remember why we're here, right? Why do we like XRP? Why do we want to get rich off? See, most people look at crypto like, okay, I buy it, I hold it, I make money. But there's so much more than that, right? Yes, we're all here to make money off of crypto. But at the end of the day, crypto is not just about making money. It's about transforming the way we bank, the way we do exchanges, the way we make payments. It changes the way we think about how money really works and where it actually comes from, right? So, and there's another great documentary called Hidden Secrets of Money. So there's that word again, money. Go to YouTube, type in The Hidden Secrets of Money. It's a series, it's a 10-part series, and it even has HBAR and crypto in there. And that's where the first time I heard of HBAR. This was years ago. So listen to that. It's by Mike Maloney, gold and silver guy. And he takes you back to the Roman days, and he takes you through a historical timeline of how money is and how it came to be and how these evil people came to infiltrate. That's what they did. They infiltrated our system from within, right? And they basically annihilated our perception of how things actually, basically they put us to sleep, right? They gave us some sleepy time stuff and essentially saying, okay, we got it all under control, but we really don't. So anyways, I'm not going to keep going down this road because I could talk about this stuff all day. You know, this is the driving force behind my channel. This is why I even do YouTube, because it's not like I'm trying to spread the message of crypto. I'm trying to spread the message of why crypto is important. And the price is just the cherry on top, right? So anyways, this is how I make my living, right? And I got to do it right or I fail. So anyways, let's jump into this. I'm not going to be that long because it's already past an hour. And if you can hit that like button, I really appreciate that. Yeah, anyway, we broke out, guys. So, and the reason I'm not going down it too much is because I just put a video out yesterday, right? And yeah, so we have officially broken out. Remember, we talked about this too. We said there's going to be a big breakout probably sometime in the next week or so, right? So you can see we have completely broken above the supply line, right? Here's your supply line right here. And this is your demand line right here, right? And we broke out of the supply line. So now we have a daily candle close above that. And now basically the goal here is to take this line and to get back above 267 to, let's see, what's this right here? 250. So yeah, so what this one's 267. Yeah, so between 250 and 270, that's really the area we want to get above. So this is the next order of business. So, but look, this is a green candle, a green candle, a green candle, a green candle. We've been going up 4, 8, 12, 16. We've been going up for the last 16 days, guys. We've been going up, 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 up. So I think we could be chilling out here a little bit. Maybe we flag out. Like yesterday's video, I said maybe this week could be a bearish week. And a lot of times when you have a bullish Monday, you have a bearish rest of the, or not rest of the week, but throughout the week it could be leading into, and when I mean bearish, I mean not super bearish, but pretty much just chilling out for a little bit. So let's zoom in here, right? So you can see we have a three-wave move up. We pulled back, and now we're trying to get through this retracement level. So we could actually have an A, B, C, and come down and backtest the top of this downward resistance line before then getting back up here, right? And that could be a big 1, 2, or A, B, C, a bigger three-way move, right? Because ultimately the goal is to get back up here. I think that's where we're eventually heading, is that $3 area. So, but it's going to take a little bit of work to get there, right? So anyways, that's pretty much it. I mean, if you want more information, just go back and watch yesterday's video. Everything is basically the same. So let's take a look at the weekly chart. The weekly chart looks pretty good, right? The weekly chart, here was our weekly candle. It was nice and solid, nothing wrong with it. You can also look at it kind of like this, kind of like a descending or an ascending triangle, right? Kind of. Let's see here if I can push it up a little bit more. Yeah, it's not the greatest, but there you go, something like that. So maybe we can work our way up and then work our way back down and then kind of break out of there. I mean, that's just an idea, right? But the main idea here is, I mean, we got a three-way pullback, right? If you look at the weekly chart, that's a three-way move there. Boom, 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 right? So if this is a flat A, B, or WXY, boom, 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 but did it end here or did it end here? That's the question. But regardless, we should start making our way back up. But this is the weekly chart. But on the smaller time frames, you know, it's challenging because we're in a range, right? It's kind of difficult because we're not trending. We're not trending in a specific direction to go to base that off. We're ranging, right? And the thing is with range, a lot of times you range three waves, right? 3 waves up, 3 waves down. So we have 3 waves down. There's 3 waves down. And I can look at this as a 1 and then A, or actually 3 down, 3 up, and then 3 back down. So there's 3 down, right? So if this is WXY, that's your, or ABC, whatever, that's your WXY, right? That's your 4th wave correction. And then you have a 1, ABC, there's your 2, right there. And now we're starting to rev up the engine, Maybe we have to come back down and revisit the low one more time. Maybe we go up. Obviously, we're going up now, and then we pull back a little bit, and then that's when we start getting back up here. So just because we're trending up doesn't mean, you know, we're going to have big pullbacks, right? So, but when we're ranging like this, really the only thing we can look for is getting back, let's say 284. So, we could see right here, we have 3 waves down and we have 3 waves up. So this could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves down, right? Or it could be 3. That's why I said we might have a little bit of a down week this week. But if we could break above this high, then I'm going to take that out the window. I'm not going to say that, right? Because it's all about what? The retrace levels. So you can see this looks a little bearish here. I don't think we're gonna go up anymore today. Look at that. We had a dump, right? And now we're making our way to the retrace. And look, we just had a 618 retrace. So are we going to flag out all week? Boom, 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 and then go up? That's what we're trying to figure out, right? So, yeah, we could be. It could be a boring week this week, and unless we can break above 250. If we could break above 251, 253, really 255, right around this area, then we could see a move up to 273 this week, right? But it really depends if we can get through the retracement levels. So we knocked on the door. We came up and knocked once, right? Is that going to be enough? Or do we have to pull back a little bit to get going a little bit further? Because I'd like to see like a 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe we get a 5 here, like a diagonal. And then we get a 3-way pullback, and then we go up. That's kind of what I would like to see. That way it would solidify the 5-way move instead of the 3-way move. So, all right, let's quickly cover Bitcoin. Bitcoin looks good. I think Bitcoin is a diag. Look at that. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's flag out a little bit and then continue higher. I think that's kind of what we're doing here. Monero, damn. Monero had a nice jump here. It's a 3-way move, right? I'm still looking at this as a 3, and then a 3, and then a 3 down. That right there is a flat. And then this looks like this, I'm not sure what this is, a 1, 2, and then a 1, 2, or a 1, and then an ABC 2, right? And then we're kind of, maybe this is another a diag here. No, because it's 3. Or, okay, yeah, we have 3 up, and then we have 3 down. Maybe we're getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up. That's 3 there. So then maybe we get 3 back down and then head up for 5. These are just speculation ideas here. But yeah, I wish I could have bought that. All right, so Theta. Let me know in the comments section if you guys like me or like discussing the Federal Reserve, the banking system, the new financial system, the transition, right? How that's going to look, speculating. Yeah, if Theta looks like, we're just chilling up here. So this is not going to be sustainable. Eventually, you're going to break it down. But if we keep channeling up and break up, we're probably just going to get a spike like this and then start to come down. Because it needs to kind of level off. It needs to we need to develop a basin here, right? Coming back up, coming back down, coming back up, coming back down, and then eventually breaking out. That's what I want to see, something like that. That gives us definition within the structure. So, let's see, is there any examples? Because it could be something like this here, where you actually have to break down again. You know what I mean? And that could be something like right there. And then we kind of come down and then hit the flag, so we could have another dump here, right? Before we go up. But so far we're trending higher, so that's good. SHIB looks pretty interesting, I think. I want to say that was 5 though, and then we had like a 3-way pullback, and now we're starting to go up higher. So not too much to go over. ADA looks interesting. You got 3 up, okay, you got 3 down, and then you have this 1, 2 here. So this could actually be 3, 4, and 5 coming up soon. Maybe. Let's see if we can get it. Okay, Litecoin's coming up too a little bit. Kind of looks like a little bit of a channel, but you can also say maybe an ascending triangle. Yeah, because we got a run up and we got a flat here. Or actually, yeah, there's your flat there. And then this looks like a 1. And maybe all of this is a 2. And then we go up for 3. Yeah, everything looks pretty decent right now. No cause for concern. I think this week will be hopefully pretty good. HBAR got a pop. That's good. Yeah, because we've been playing around here a little bit too much. Remember, we were looking at this. I'm going to wrap up the video. Remember, we were looking at this in comparison to Bitcoin right here. So let me change that to the 2-day chart. And if you look closely right there, and then I'll put this right here, you can see you have a move down. You have a move down, and then you chop, 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 and then you have a head. Chop, chop, chop down. Same thing here. Chop, chop, chop. Then you have a head, and then you chop, chop, chop down. Right? And then what happens is you get a nice move out of it. You kind of play around a little bit down here, and then you get that pop out of there. So that's kind of, I'm not saying that's going to happen. It just reminded me, it reminds me of Bitcoin when it was doing that. So, yeah, we have to hold support though. Let's see if we can hold it. It would make more sense if we made our way back up, if it's going to break down, at least come up one more time, then down. But, yeah, HBAR is my least favorite one because I just don't really like how much it's been flirting with the lows. ADA, you can see how ADA is going up while, you know, it's a little bit further away from the lows. Yeah, most things have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves down. They come up, they flag out, and then they work their way back up to the retrace. That's what I think's happening here. So that's what I believe will happen. Do we need one more low first and then go? I mean, it's possible, but maybe not so likely. Let's see, Ethereum. Ethereum doesn't look as nice looking. Matic looks like a nice floor. Link. See, the problem with Link is, let's see. Why does it always go to the top? There we go. It's just very steep. See, we don't want that. We don't want, we want things like this. You see how it came down? We had a 3-way move down, 3-way move down, right? And then we created this base. We were going up and then down, up and then down. We were going up and then down, and then we broke out, right? But remember, people said, oh, we're going to break down because we had a head and shoulders. And I said, no. We're not likely because of the structure, right? We already had 3 down, so we were expecting a move up, right? So now the same thing again. We have a 3-way move down, and it looks like we could be like right here. So we need to create structure in here and then break out. At least a little bit, you know. Maybe it doesn't have to be that big. I mean, it could be as big as this down here. See, this didn't take that long. Right there. Or even right there. See how you create these bases? That's where you want to buy. You know how they say buy low, sell high, or yeah, buy low, sell high? Well, it doesn't really work out that way. A lot of times. It's easy to buy low and sell high, but what define high, define low, you know? What's better is to buy when things are calm, when nobody's looking, when everybody's looking somewhere else, right? When things are boring, that's the time to buy, right? When nobody's paying attention, when everything is boring and it's kind of just going flat, 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 that's when you buy, right? But you have to have either a 5 or a 3-wave move down before pulling that trigger. So everything's pretty much the same. AVAX had a nice pop though. Look at that. Okay, so that's a clear 3. Clear 3, right? You got resistance. So what now? Maybe we get 3 down like this and we come down, we retest that, right? And then let's say we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up. And that becomes 3 like that. And then maybe we get 3 back down and then we go up for 5. And that whole thing kind of creates this structure in here to break us out of. I mean, that's one way to look at it. But we looked at Bitcoin already. Bitcoin had a nice pop, actually. But it's flagging out, though, to the upside. So if I flip it upside down, it actually looks kind of bearish, right? It looks like it's going to break out to the upside. It looks like it. Well, okay, so we have a crash. We have a 3-wave move up, and now we're kind of flagging out in here. So I'm not sure if this would be equivalent as 3, but the reason I kind of don't like it for more down is because it's kind of bottlenecking in a way. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So maybe we do have a big move down, something like that, right? Which would mean up because it's reversed. So anyways, I think for the most part, this big move here is done. And now it's all about creating the base and leveling off. And then we're going to want to see this round out. So you have the sell side of the curve and you have the buy side of the curve. I think we're at the lows here. That's not financial advice. I could be totally wrong, right? I could be wrong, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. Based off the wave structure, based off how long it's been, based off the support and resistance. I mean, you can see where we are, right? So, let's take a look around here. Like DOT, I mean, you're right at the lows here, right? Same thing with Ethereum Classic. So, I mean, it's just been going up, or down, up, down, up, down, up, right? Just all of this oscillation, it's too much. What it needs to do is kind of like something like this. It needs to kind of just flatten out a little bit, and maybe it can get a bigger run here. I haven't looked at render. Oh yeah, render looks pretty good here. Damn, that would have been a good buy right there. I missed that one. Oh, render looks beautiful. Look at that. You got a perfect C wave. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You got 3 down and you got 3 up. So you have an A, a B, and a C. And do we have divergence between the 3rd and the 5th? Let's see. Not on the 2-day. Let's see, on the 1-day. Yes, you have divergence right there, right there. So, yeah, I wish I would have bought that. That would have been a nice buy. But anyways, I think that'll do it for this video. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Definitely hit the like button because it's a longer video and it doesn't get clicked on as much. But I'm okay with that. I can easily make a 10-minute video and my life would be so much easier and it would be faster and I would have more time and more people would watch. But I kind of like saying what I have to say, and explaining everything. So, especially days like this, So, anyways, I will catch you guys on the next one. Let's see if we can get back to this downward resistance line sometime over the next couple weeks here. And then eventually, because the main idea is creating a base, breaking out, and getting to the retrace levels. So write it down. That's what I think is going on. All right, I will catch you on the next one. Cheers.